Well, the Mailcase Mailbox has arrived. I went for the rich bronze out of the choices of rich bronze, white, storm gray, black, or stainless steel. And haven't opened it and looked at it yet, but I'm about to do that and get this baby installed into my yard. Okay, so the mailbox came with some keys and a red flag and some instructions. I've got it laying on the back. Here's the, and actually let me turn this around so I have better lighting. Maybe this will show it better. There we go. Yeah, all right, so this one looks like 4 inches from hole to hole. And these two, for these bolt holes, is 10 inches, 4 by 10. So you could install this with a homemade plate if you wanted to just put those 4 by 10. These bolts actually came with the post, not the mailbox. So here's the bolts for it. And we'll get to those later. Wow, what a beefy, solid unit this is. This is quite nice, I have to admit. I'm really gonna like this. Okay, here is my post. I did put some support in there to kind of hold on to the concrete a bit, and then I've got some other bars that I'll hammer into the dirt to the concrete to hold on to the dirt real good, and that way this thing won't be wobbling in the future as things expand and contract and settle and get tugged on and bumped into or whatever. Hopefully this will never need to be taken out, because this is going to be well, this is something that I will not take out. I'll move and buy a different house versus take this thing out after I'm going to be putting 2 bags of concrete in here. I know people are probably going to say that's way overkill, but I have had wobbly mailboxes in almost every house I've ever been in. I think these bolts going through it are going to grab onto that concrete for dear life and not wobble. It would take oh, and then I don't want the concrete ball to wobble in the dirt, so that's why I'm going to hammer some spikes, some metal rods, kind of like rebar, but they're just metal rods with a sharp point on them. I'll hopefully show that on video when I get it hammered in there. That way the concrete will adhere to those, and those will be deep in the ground, and so the concrete ball should not be rocking back and forth either. Okay, so I removed the old mailbox and I'm taking the measurements that Mailcase had online, 12 inches back from the curb, 6 inches back from the edge of the curb. Okay, here's what it's looking like. Got it buried in there real nicely. Got some support in there for the concrete. As you can see, the bars are just hammered in there into the ground so that the concrete will stay firm to the ground, you know, develop a wobble, hopefully ever. And that's it. I put a mark on the little Sharpie mark there, if you can see it, is my 21 inch mark, I believe it was, and trying to make it nice and straight before I put concrete in. In order to get that deep, I needed a little help. My post hole digger didn't quite go down deep enough in this hard clay, so that loosened up the clay really nicely. So there we go. I'm going to pour some concrete in here and let it cure, and then I'll mount the box soon. Well, the install is done. I put some landscape fabric down and some new rock, and waited for the concrete to cure, and it's very solid. I did have one little problem. The bolts that came with it are it's kind of weird. even though they give you 2 washers, and I tried to use the 2 washers on the correct side to give it as much space as possible, and they bottom out without getting tight. The thing will still be loose, and if you try to tighten them up any further, they just snap right off. And I snapped 2 bolts off trying to get them to snug the mailbox to the post, and they just wouldn't work. They're the way the nuts are made, they are locking nuts that are a nice locking nut. If you could get them on there, then they would be nice and tight, but no, they're too cheaply made. The bolts themselves just can't handle tightening them up that tight in order to tighten the mailbox down. And I wasn't tightening them too much. I was just trying to get it snug to where the mailbox wasn't jiggling around. So definitely bad bolts, but everything else is really nice and no complaints at all. I love the mailbox, and just go down to the hardware store and get you some grade 8 bolts. I think you'll love this mailbox. Okay, I would like to talk a little bit more about these bolts for some reason. It intrigues me as to why Mailcase decided to go for these bolts when they have such a high quality case. And these are an A2. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. Maybe I'll take a picture of it. They're an A2 stainless steel metric bolt, and it's great for resisting rust and for outdoor uses and that type of thing. And for something lighter weight, you can get away with using an A2. That's comparable to a grade 2 bolt, maybe just slightly better than a grade 2. And if you're familiar with the grade of bolts, there's various grades, but when you go into a hardware store, you're typically going to find grade 2, grade 5, or grade 8. Grade 8 are obviously the very high quality, very high strength bolts. Grade 5 are pretty good as well. And grade 2, mediocre at best, as you can see right here. This is what I'm getting at right here. So I wanted to explain a little bit more about what I was doing to install these bolts. I believe I installed them the only way that you can. Like, I wasn't putting the washers in the wrong area. I tried 2 different things, but the main thing that I wanted to make sure, I had a washer on this side just to have a little bit more surface coverage, and then I put 1 washer on this side of the nut. I tried it with 2 washers on that side of the nut, but when you think about it, it's 6 1/2 dozen or the other, as old people would say. And I am an old person, so I can get away with doing that now. Older, anyway, not old. And so what I wanted to talk about here a little bit is, it's obvious that it doesn't matter where the washers are in terms of the length of this bolt. And when you consider the thickness of the plate that's welded on the top of the post that it has to go through, and the mailbox itself, this nut is going to have to be cranked down enough to make those snug against each other. And so what I'm trying to point out here, to make sure that is understood for those who care, this nut right here would only go about this one here. We didn't even get to that level. This is my second broken nut. This was my first one. I didn't even try number 3. I just decided to go down and get some higher quality bolts after the first 2 failed attempts here. But on my first one here, the nut got to where basically it was flush with the bottom of the tip of the bolt here. As you can see, the tip of the bolt pretty much flush there. And this, imagine I had a washer here, Imagine the thickness of the post plate, let's just say coming to about right here, and the thickness of the mailbox itself, let's just say coming about right here. And imagine an eighth of an inch of play in there. That's what I was dealing with. This bolt was flopping around in there. I'm noticing with my, I have a wrench on one end holding the nut, holding the bolt down, and I have a socket and a ratchet with holding, turning the nut in. And it was starting to get really tight, really tight. I was like, "Oh, what's going on?" I feel like the mailbox should be tight, but it's still wobbly because it hasn't reached snugness yet. So I had no choice but to go tighter and tighter and tighter. Now, so I went so tight that, and mind you, I'm not using a power tool or anything like that. I didn't want anyone to think that I have some kind of a major power tool. I'm just using hand tools. I'm just cranking it with my hands. And this bolt snapped just from cranking it with my hands just to try to get it tight. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try it again. And I put the second one on, and it didn't even reach flush. I mean, it's an eighth of an inch back in there. And it snapped off with all kind. And I had two washers on this end. Not that it matters which side the washers are on. And what I could point out is if a person did put, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 washers on one bolt, you could probably get it snug against each other and probably get this bolt to not snap. Unless you're on this one, like on this case, it snapped pretty darn quick. So even that might not work. But anyway, I digress. I'm just saying mailbox that's a mailbox that is a high security mailbox needs to have a better grade bolt. It really does, because when you think about it, if you did achieve, let's say you put 6 or 7 washers on this thing, and you got the nut to be secured on there. Let's just say you put it on this way and the nut is inside the mailbox and this is exposed outside. And imagine you got it snug, right? A thief could come along, put it on there, and twist this right off. All they'd have to do is, if they had a breaker bar, it would be a piece of cake. If they have a socket on a ratchet, they could just break that off. And granted, they're not going to tighten it. They're probably going to try to loosen it. And when they try to loosen it, the whole thing might spin and they may not get your mailbox. But my point is that it is breakable. And for a high security mailbox like that, you don't want a bolt that's going to break this easily. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about tensile strength. Since Mailcase, and I'm not trying to be uncooperative. I'm trying to provide some constructive criticism here, just because I care about things like this, and I know other people do too when they pay that much for a mailbox. We're talking about tensile strength. We're talking about MPa or megapascals, and when you talk about that, we're talking about pulling force, pulling stress for braking. In other words, if this was holding the mailbox in, if someone were to kind of grab onto this and pull straight down to try to break this bolt, yeah, it would be a lot. I mean, it would be thousands, 100,000, approximately 100,000 pounds of force. In other words, it wouldn't be, you couldn't do it. However, when you talk about something that is more relevant to the situation, which is, when you're taking a bolt off, you're not pulling it down, obviously. You're twisting it. And that twisting strength is also known as torsional strength. And that is the measuring the bolt's ability to resist being sheared or twisted in half when the torque is applied. And that's what you're doing with a wrench, with a whatever you got in your hand for your tool. You're going to twist it to try to get it off, and that is not 100,000 pounds of force. That is much less. And a grade 2 bolt is a lower quality bolt. Let's face it. And I called it a grade 2 bolt. It's not. It's an A2 bolt, which is a little different than a grade 2 bolt. However, the A2 bolt is not that much better than a grade 2 bolt. So I would just say that I think Mailcase should highly consider upgrading this to a higher quality bolt. That's for sure. And test these things to see that they will actually tighten against the post base, or what do you call it, the plate, and that it'll actually secure it to the mailbox before snapping. If they would test these, they would probably find out that these bolts are just not appropriate to be given out for these mailboxes. I mean, when someone pays $300 or more for a mailbox, you want a bolt that'll work. So just in case, and it's highly doubtful that Mailcase will ever even see my video, maybe I'll send it to them. You know, maybe they'll see it. Yeah, just food for thought. It's kind of not relevant for me anymore because my mailbox is installed, and I went down to the hardware store and went ahead and bought grade 8 bolts. Those things went on tight, strong. It's holding it really secure. And if anybody tries to bust it from a torsional perspective, they're not going to be able to. And if they do loosen it, it's just going to spin inside the mailbox. They're not going to be able to get a wrench on the inside because the mailbox is locked. And I feel like it's way more secure like that. So a message to other people who are considering buying this box: if Mailcase has not upgraded their bolts, I would go down and get some bolts. These are 1 inch 7/16. Don't mark my word on that. I can't remember for sure. Or take the old bolts down. Take an old bolt, you know, not old bolt, the bad bolt, I'll call it. Take a bad bolt down. I don't want to call it a bad bolt. It's a good bolt for some things. The inappropriate bolt. Take the inappropriate bolt for the task at hand down to the hardware store and say, yeah, I need this size bolt, only in a grade 8. And you can put it in. Most hardware stores have those little things where you can test the exact size of the bolt, or take the nut down, make sure that the nut threads on the grade 8 bolt, and then go from there. Yeah, you get the idea. Go get yourself some good bolts. It's going to cost you an extra $10 to get 4 bolts, 4 washers. Or, no, you don't have to get the grade 8 washers if you don't want. 4 nuts, I mean. For 4 bolts and 4 nuts, you might spend, I think mine was 10 or 12 bucks. I forget how much it was. A couple of bucks per bolt or something like that. $1 something per bolt, and I think 89 cents per nut, something like that. It's worth it. It's definitely worth it. Now you got peace of mind. Now you're not fumbling with this. Boy, I spent so much time trying to figure out looking through some bolts in my bag. Couldn't find anything, so I ended up just going down to the hardware store and buying more bolts. What a pain when you're trying to install your mailbox and you're looking forward to getting your mailbox mounted to the post. All your neighbors are looking at you and thinking, oh, you can't even tighten a bolt. What an idiot. Oh, sorry. Sometimes I get a little out of control. I don't care what my neighbors think. Well, I do a little bit, but anyway, get yourself some bolts. But definitely still get yourself the Mailcase mailbox, even in spite of the pain in the butt bolts I had to deal with. It was well worth it to get that high quality mailbox. So anyway, I hope this video helped someone. This is Jim Impressions. I do give my impressions of various products and things that are out there just for fun. And I love this mailbox. I do, and I think you're going to love it too. I do not love the bolts. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.